free to give us a bit of crap in the comments if you want for not getting to what it is that you want us to cover in the Gillette Labs Performance Rankings this week, because there's just too much going on. Shane wanted us to start in the green, by the way, which we do on very special occasions when there's only one thing that we can really talk about and we need to make sure we do it, but we're not doing it.
Oh yeah, it's not a big deal, yeah. It's not the Grand Slam on it. Go away, would you?
Can I also just say, it shouldn't be Monaghan in the green at all. It should be Kieran McManus. Like, what the hell?
Conor McManus.
Jesus Christ.
That's the old Sunday game trick.
Kieran was a good footballer of his day.
I apologise. I've had a little senior moment at the start of the show today. Can I please have another coffee?
That's twice you pissed me off already this morning.
Great player, Kieran McManus.
He was, to be fair.
All-star,
nowhere near as good.
Pretty sure he was an all-star.
I was
helping you out here, Jared. That's all.
Screwing up the Hall of Fame is one of the great things that the GAA has managed to do over the last 10 years, where they launched it and then just forgot about it because it obviously didn't have a sponsor at the right level. And I don't mean that like a brand. Somebody wasn't driving it. But like McManus...
Yeah, statue in the town maybe.
Well, I don't know. It's just, this is ridious. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah,
we're not starting with the green.
No, we're not. We're starting the red.
Because then you can't clip that bit.
Exactly, yeah. The news that came late last night, what was it, after 10 o'clock? It was 10:20 p.m. Thank you, Colin. Antonio Conte, gone from Spurs, hardly surprising, but... I guess the international break was the perfect window in which to do it. Now, we now have a clear understanding of his performance record in terms of how he compared managerially percentage-wise to his other clubs. Juventus, lads, he had a win percentage of 67.5%. At Chelsea, it was down slightly, 65.1. Down slightly again at Inter, 62.7. And 54.1 at Spurs.
I think the big thing is that he won leagues everywhere, though.
He did, yeah. Not at Spurs, no trophies.
At Inter, that was, you talk to Inter fans... when that news came through, they're this is transformative. He's going to win the league because he always wins the league. Maybe he will.
It's slightly strange that his second man in command, Stellini's taking the job to the end of the season. Ryan Mason as well. There was a video that went viral recently. I don't know if you lads saw it, of during the AC Milan game, the second leg, and Tony Conte is giving directions to Harry Kane, and Ryan Mason is standing beside him, and Kane looks to Mason as if to say, "What is he saying? What is he talking about here? What does he want?" And Mason just shrugs his shoulders. He's like, I don't know. Walks away. It's brilliant.
Well, he did seem to have the magic touch for a couple of games where Conte was away. Does the timing of this not a little bit strange? Does nobody else think? Like, we're 8 days now since their last game. Where you mentioned the international window, Shane. Like, the international window is nearly closed. Like, it's a bizarre timing. If you were into a bit of a conspiracy there, I don't know how we feel about a nice conspiracy on Monday morning.
Throw it over.
There's a little bit of tinfoil hat, but England have just finished their game, obviously, and Harry Kane would have been very much front and centre over the last number of days, obviously chatting about all that. And now it doesn't need to be commenting about this thing. It's strange timing. Whatever about that slight tinfoil hat aspect to it. It's certainly strange, isn't it? That there's no new information has come to light.
Well,
the rant is well old, unless they've sidled up to.
The training sessions hadn't. There was nothing. There was no work being done. He wasn't due back. He was in Italy. He was due back to take training, and so it was like, don't come back. That was it. So there was no job for him to do in the meantime. There was going to be a job for him to do, and also I think to your point, if they had sacked it, there would have been constant questions of Harry Kane. They wait until the moment where the news dump happens at its most appropriate moment, and obviously this was done ages. They were just coming to an arrangement.
Even in terms of clearing the decks to talk to the new person, whoever that would be. Maybe that's the development. Maybe there's a little...
Well, I think you bring up developments like Thomas Tuchel. The dominoes are falling. Other clubs are getting their managerial house in order. So they want to know what's out there. And I don't think they're going to get somebody new in this season. It looks like that dynamic duo partnership who have taken the club over already for couple of big games and done pretty well in those big games. I think that's the thing here. But we're not. You knew it was coming, so it's not a surprise.
Nagelsmann. I mean, the timing of Nagelsmann's departure from Bayern is, could work out perfectly for them if they wanted to go for him. I think he's the favourite.
Is he?
Let me just double check the odds. He certainly, last night when I checked, was the favourite. But would not make sense?
No.
They've confirmed that the two lads are taking it to the end of the season, right? Isn't that in itself slightly bizarre? Because, if a Nagelsmann or a Pochettino or whoever it is that comes available, surely over the next, never mind about weeks, over the next few days, they're just going to go, "Grad, you're in." And then they have to slightly kind of go back in their word a little bit. But
well, no one cares at that stage, right?
Maybe nobody cares. The whole Conte thing has been slightly bizarre in a lot of ways. There's not many people saying that the job is above Conte, right? It's more to do with this sort of narrative that he's pumping himself, obviously, post his 10-minute rant, and obviously results, and they're standing in the table and all that kind of stuff feeds into it. But at the same time, there's not a lot of people going, he's just not up to the job here. Like, he's going to walk into a big job in Italy or somewhere else somewhere very soon.
He just checked out mentally, didn't he? So long ago. Like, it must have been a strange few months for Spurs fans where, like, our manager doesn't even care anymore. I know he's had he said close family and friends that passing away in the last number of months. He said the gallbladder surgery. So he's had a tough time of it, Antonio Conte. And I suppose you forget sometimes that these lads are human beings, even though we're always like, oh, well, they're on loads of money. They're well compensated for their travails. But still, you have to have some sympathy for the man. And it's probably best for everyone that he's gone now, for himself included.
Fergus Keogh wants to know, is Conte really the problem or is it Spurs?
I think it's the latter. I mean, he's asking the question and I think he knows the answer. Like, it's not a series. It was a fourth manager in 4 years. I was surprised it's only that few. But there does seem to be a constant. Pochettino's probably the one outlier. Just this constant cycle of managers and, you know, not buying players in the correct positions, not buying the best players available. The whole Harry Kane saga limping on.
I did think that there was a world in which actually Conte and the timing of his arrival at Spurs was perfect. The stadium was open. They still had Harry Kane. He was a manager who would anticipate and expect a massive injection of cash. They have the resources to do that on the basis of the amount of money that they're making on every match day that we keep hearing about, and the fact that, like, Champions League football means that they'll be able to fill the stadium, blah, blah, blah. It felt like it was actually a perfect marriage of opportunity and moment, and somehow Spurs and Conte, I think, both blew it. I don't think Conte emerges unscathed from this. I don't think Conte is still at the same level as a manager that he was. Now the team is fourth. That's probably about where they should be, but I still think that they could probably have been pushing Manchester United this season. I don't see a significant difference between the two squads, or I don't think it's as big as everybody says it is. And they did invest loads of money, and it was supposed to be players that Paratici was buying for Conte and Conte's style of football. So he definitely suffers in this. And Spurs, like, really, I mean, you know, if you're a world-class manager who's thinking about enhancing your reputation as opposed to just getting a payday, are you going to Spurs now? Like, Spurs will be much better getting Brendan Rodgers in than Julian Nagelsmann. If you talk to we had Jasmine Babb on the show for ages, and she's like, Nagelsmann's teams don't make any sense. His style of football doesn't make any sense. So I'm not surprised Bayern kicked him out. Like, somebody here is saying in our comments, Nagelsmann came on the market, so they pulled the trigger on Conte, and apparently Spurs wanted him before they brought Conte in. He is the archetypal, short-lived 18-month manager who comes with a massive backroom team and a massive reputation, and you're paying him for 2 or 3 or 4 years, and you're on to your second or third manager afterwards. So
Well, are you waiting if you're one of those managers to see if Spurs get top 4? Because
the music starts, the merry-go-round goes, somebody hops on, the carnival, the barkers are there, like, roll up.
I'd say there's a lot of managers looking at that Spurs squad going, I don't fancy them getting top 4 this season, so maybe don't take over the job now. Wait and see, do they get Champions League?
On Ger's point, I don't know that changes at any point. Like, they're not going to ever spend enough money in the market. And even, like, there was chat about De Zerbi, wasn't there, over the last couple of weeks. Like, would you stay at Brighton and build your project there under some, like, really smart... They make some really smart acquisitions. They've obviously got an amazing pool of players there. Or do you hop into this absolute, like, basket case of a club where you're going to probably knock a year out of it and then they're going to run you out of town?
And Kane will be out the door as well, probably.
Does it increasringly look like...
It obviously depends
on the money. Is Kane going to be Matt Letizia, right, and look back in his career and go... Matt Letizia doesn't look back on his career. The many things he does at the minute is to not look back in his career with any regrets, but he probably should do, I would say.
Penalty merchant, is that what you're saying?
But is he going to look back in his career and say, I really, really, really should have got out of there when the going was good?
Well, I think Spurs are a much bigger club than Southampton, first off, and, you know, so Harry Kane's also, like, England's record top goal scorer, so and has a golden boot at the World Cup, so I suspect he'd be happy enough.
Yeah, but if King was into punditry in 10 years' time, do you want as your super underneath your name on TV when Spurs are playing?
Greatest goal scorer in the history of English football.
Yeah, but for club games,
post 92.
For club games, I mean, what trophy has he won?
I mean, okay,
gotta win trophies, Jar.
You don't actually. It turns out you actually don't. That's all bollocks, right? Like, I won 3 League Cups. I'm a genius. Like, we know loads of crap players have won.
With a player with Kane's ambition, you got to be thinking he wants to be at Man City, or he wants to be at an Arsenal. Probably not Arsenal. He wants to be at a club that are actually winning something. Surely.
Yeah, but I don't think the ship has sailed. I think Spurs are going to spend money, and Spurs did spend money. Like Spurs were big spenders last year and have been slightly unfortunate with some injuries, and so I don't think it's beyond the bounds of possibility that they will spend. It's just that I don't think that the culture of spending and the architecture built around scouting is good enough and strong enough at the moment. So that's why I'd be wary if I was one of those world-class managers. The one thing about De Zerbi is, right, so how much is De Zerbi on at Brighton? No doubt he's on $1.5 million to maybe $2.5 million max. Does he then get 10 million for going to Spurs? In which case, irrespective of whether or not it's a basket case, what are you saying to that, Adrian? Does that change your tune?
Where's the bit of paper? Where's my pen?
Where do I sign?
All right.
Move on.
Will United be knocking on Evan's door this summer? Asks Jim Sullivan. Again.
Stranger things have happened.
James McCullough. Morning, gents. I'm gutted for Monaghan GAA are not in the green for the performance rankings. We were predicted mid-table in Division 3, but topped it with 6 wins and only 1 point lost. It's a remarkable story. We will do the rest of the league GAA stories later on in the week, and we'll get into the power rankings and all that kind of stuff as well. It doesn't matter who takes over. Tottenham will always be a club of the bottle. It's in the club's DNA. A club of the bottle. I like what you've said there. It may be be a typo, but it makes perfect sense to everybody, and we all know exactly what you mean. They are a club of the bottle. Did Rory bottle it? Did Rory should he have been in red?
I don't.
2 up with 3 to play in the semi-finals of the World Match Play.
Maybe, and then he beat Scheffler in the consolation match. I don't know. I think.
Or is Rory in green because his form is back?
There you go.
I don't know.
The Ferguson to United thing, by the way, it's been interesting to see. My social media feeds have been stacked full of like the latest sort of hipster football. What would you call them? Contributors.
Oh yes.
In England, basically, who've all sort of like in a domino effect. Oh, this guy Evan Ferguson. They've all seen each other making videos about Evan Ferguson, and the latest one is Goldbridge, and he's gone. This Evan Ferguson guy. I mean, he's been even Evan Ferguson. I saw him get called in one of them, and United should be interested in this guy. I've just discovered him.
Named after the poet Ivan Boland, of course.
Of course, famously. Shall we move on to the other performances of the weekend? And still in the red is
Goldbridge pro him, obviously. Yes.
Oh yeah, they all are. It's like I've discovered this kid.
Yeah.
Remember you heard it here first, and the 20 other influencers.
What a scout you are, Goldbridge. Well done. Irish women's rugby, bad weekend. Kind of thought, they're going to get some revenge on Wales after last year, but it wasn't to be in that match in Cardiff, and a disappointing defeat. Nearly 5,000 people, a record crowd over in Wales as well for them. Ill-disciplined, I think, is a phrase you could use to describe Ireland's performance. Nicola Friday, the captain, was fairly disappointed speaking afterwards, and she pointed to a number of things. It's one thing losing a game in the Six Nations, but when you haven't played well for the guts of an hour, it certainly adds to the element of disappointment, and it leaves you thinking, right, well, we've England and France at home. Those games, with all due respect to the Irish team, are going to be very, very difficult to get anything from. So this seemed like an opportunity to maybe sneak a top 3 place in the Six Nations this year, but it's off to the worst possible start, lads. It's fairly disappointing, to say the least. It's
an unmitigated disaster. It's certainly there's a few people. I don't know if you follow the same people on Twitter that I follow, but there's a guy who's been involved in club rugby and the women's game for ages, who like every couple of weeks will have a long thread of the litany of problems in women's rugby, and every time you read it you're like, well, this all seems to make a lot of sense, and it doesn't seem like the stakeholders in the club game were ever involved in what happened over the last 18 months to 2 years. So it looks like there's been the phrase is window dressing, I think, in Roy Keane's piece in the Mail today. A lot of window dressing is done at the top level, and they're hoping somehow that last season's tour to Japan could somehow get the current crop up, who, bear in mind, don't have all their best players because we've decided to prioritise the 7s over the 15s game because of World Cup qualification leading to extra money, and so then it kind of becomes self-financing. We're trying to fight these two wars on 2 different fronts with no resources, really, when you compare the women's game to the men's game, or even the Irish women's game to the English or the French women's game, or now it turns out the Welsh, who are all playing their club rugby in England too. So it must be very difficult for the coaching ticket for them to assess where to go. But the IRFU are totally and utterly 100% responsible for this. And the people who are in charge of the IRFU have been involved in the IRFU for a long period of time. We saw that letter that the players all signed. Is that 2 years ago now? Is it less than 2 years? Is it? So I don't know. I think that this is the chickens coming home to roost, really. And the talk of finishing third now looks fanciful, and it's a real rod for their backs, because that's what they said. Like, oh, we need to be the best of the rest behind France and England, and the performance levels weren't there. They looked well off it. This may be an overreaction to one bad performance, and maybe they can recover it over the rest of the Six Nations, or else it is just a wake-up call for the RFU to go, actually, the stuff that we're pretending to be doing here by offering contracts and giving ourselves great pats on the back as an organisation for our equality is miles off where it needs to be.
It was very dispiriting, really dispiriting. And the points that you make mean that it's not going to get all that better anytime soon. Like that entire Wales 23. And by the way, you have to remind yourself that we were within a hair's breadth of getting the wooden spoon last year as well. And we're not going to be a million miles off. It was a last minute try against the Scots that saved at that time. But the Wales 23 are all playing their rugby in the Premier 15s, which is the best league in the world. And the Irish players aren't, and they're very much encouraged obviously to be home-based players, but like you say, the system that's feeding the men's team, for example, and all the plaudits they've got over the last while is just not there on the women's side. Wales were grand, like their world-class basics, to borrow the phrase of the last 7 days, were absolutely their basics were world-class. They really were. Like it wasn't as if they were doing anything wildly different to Ireland. It's just they were able to execute all the basic skills brilliantly. And look, there's the structure bit, and then there's the right. We have to pick ourselves up, and we have to welcome France to Dublin obviously next Saturday, and we need to
Cork. They're all in Musgrave.
To Cork. Sorry, you're right. There's that bit going on, and look, they'll be grasping at sort of whatever positives they can. It was 5-5 in the second half. Maybe there's some way of. France is probably, France struggled against Italy actually over the weekend as well, which in itself was slightly bizarre, but maybe more of an indication that Italy are also going to finish ahead of Ireland in the Six Nations. But yeah, you just couldn't get away from the sense of it just been an incredibly deflating experience.
Yeah, a bit dispiriting. And look, Wales kind of targeted that young Irish team as well. We kind of spoke with Quinny on that on Friday. Like, Sive McGrath's only 18 and she's thrown straight in, and the Welsh pack just targeted her. You could clearly see that. So the youthful players in the Irish team had a tough time, but look, it's an experience for them. But unfortunately for them, had to be in the red this morning. We'll stick with rugby for the Amber lads, because mixed weekend, I guess you could say, for the Irish provinces in the URC. Leinster will be top seeds in the URC playoffs. That stunning 22-all draw with the Stormers. So the 19-game winning run comes to an end, but I don't think they'll be too upset. A lot of Leinster players, of course, missing after the Grand Slam exploits, but number of good tries. Scott Penny and Max Deegan among them, Rob Russell as well. I think Leo Cullen will be pretty happy with the way things
went. They were getting killed in the first half by a team laden with Springboks, and then they fought back to I think maybe they'll be a bit disappointed that they didn't get the victory in the end. Like a difficult game for them, but when you look at the list of players who are to come back in both the pack and the backs, it's like basically the full Ireland team minus Sexton and Ringrose, who are going to be back in for the game against Ulster next weekend. So the strength and depth that they have is really interesting, and their ability to perform without those frontline players, and their ability to come back from a situation and to dig in. There was numerous bits where there was one incident where they were attacking and it looked like they were going to score, and the ball got turned over, and was it the Bulls they were playing?
Stormers,
sorry. The South African team run the length of the pitch, and they're about to run a try in when, and there's somebody's done it might have been Berto Jackman on Twitter, I'm not sure, but points out that the trailing winger has made up like all this ground to just about get over and jackal the ball, and that keeps them at 22 and they don't score again. So it's like this kind of turning point in the match where it looks like you're about to score to get back in. I think it might have been just before half time, and all of a sudden you're forced to defend. And I'm bringing this up because it's a complete contrast with the situation at Munster, and I'm really interested to hear what Alan Quillen has to say about this, because of all of the lows that Munster have had, the 31-0 down at home, what the hell is going on there? Because we kept hearing that the Ireland team needs to be more representative. There's all these great young players who should be given an opportunity. They should be in the squad. Let's be having you now, lads. Where are you?
20 unanswered points for the Warriors in the first half. That's worrying at home, especially. It'd be worrying enough in Glasgow.
Well, Quinny himself was saying, wasn't he, on Friday, that the Glasgow game, the upcoming Stormers game, and the upcoming Sharks game, I think, in the URC are way more important than the Sharks game in the Highton Cup for Munster, and that's an awful start for them.
Sorry, both in South Africa, those two games, as they're looking to stay in the URC, that's worrying for Munster for sure.
How many teams, by the way? When you watched Leinster on Friday night, I have to say, I'm not saying it's top of the list, but there are a few things I enjoy more than a URC game on a Friday night. It's an absolute cracker. But they're 17-0 down. How many teams are you looking at in that position going, grand, no panic here? They'll probably get back into this game. You know, like they're just and I don't know, on your point, Ger, how many of those players are actually going to be in the team for next weekend? Like, possibly none of them.
Very few of them will be, but like, you've no doubts about Scott Penny now as somebody who will be the long-term successor to Josh van der Fleer,
or 10 years time,
if he needs to step in at any point, that he's going to be capable of doing that. And like, you're definitely, I have my rugby app going, who's this, what's this, where's that, what age is he? And I don't know, it's an incredible testimony to the quality of coaching that's going on. Like, you know, in fairness, Munster did come out in the second half and show something. So there is something for them to work on in training this week, but it's very, very disappointing. Ulster, on the other hand, Ulster have gone from absolute basket case to, this is what we thought you were the whole time.
The Tom Stewart show. I think Rob Herring will start against Leinster next weekend, but all of a sudden, Dan McFarlane has a decision to make, doesn't he? I mean, Stewart's unbelievable. His try-scoring record rivals any winger in the URC. It's incredible. He's certainly putting himself. I know hooker is probably one of those positions where we've got a few options. Let's be honest.
Well, but, I mean, it's incredibly attritional. So, would you be terribly surprised to see him get some game time at the World Cup? I would absolutely not be at this stage.
And he was involved. He was around the squad at Abbottstown throughout the Six Nations as well. Just didn't really get his opportunity. But the performances he's putting in, lads. He's only a kid as well. Dan McFarlane was keen to point out after the game he has things to improve as well. He gave away a couple of penalties later on in the match, but of course he's going to do that.
I don't think there's any. I mean, even what you're saying there, I think that Herring is going to start, isn't he? I mean,
he will, but like, surely there's a decision to be made now. If you score a hat-trick of tries, he's the form. Do you pick the form player?
The captain, isn't he?
Yeah, but do you like?
Well, Herring's not out of form. He literally scored a try. He's just scoring a try in the Six Nations. So
two other things on this. They obviously have largely their first choice backs available to them, and that's beginning to look really impressive as well. So all of a sudden, what was a complete gimme when the draw was made for Leinster looked less like a gimme than it would have been. So you can expect a proper game, and Ulster have definitely racked up big scores against Leinster before, and stuff has happened in the game, and their heads have dropped. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens in that game.
Clean sweep, by the way, for Ulster against the four South African sides, which is not bad.
No, I mean, they've completely rescued their season, where you were wondering about whether or not everybody was aligned. They are 100% aligned at this stage, and you would expect them to cause some damage later on in the competition as well. Quick word about Connacht. Obviously, this is the end of the Andy Friend era, and he's gone out with a bang.
Yeah, 41-26 point win over Edinburgh. Bonus point win as well. Performance was very good, I think. The atmosphere looked fairly rousing in the sports ground, as it usually is. And when you think about the fact that they're missing Mac Hansen, they're missing Bundy Aki, they're missing Finlay Bealham, pretty good. I think Connacht fans this morning will be waking up with a smile on their face.
I hope they've made peace with Bundy, and I hope he's going to start playing for the rest of the season, because they could definitely do with him being added to the team, and adding bums on seats as well. Real cult hero. So anyway, we say mixed weekend. It was a brilliant weekend for three of the provinces, and a disaster from Munster's perspective, but an opportunity for them to turn things around really quickly. And obviously they'll have Peter Manny back in the side for next weekend. I do now think that all of a sudden that away game in South Africa is massive for them, because if they were to go and get tanked, if they were to roll over the way they did in the first half last week, then something cultural is wrong. But if they were to be able to get a performance, you can write that off. We got something wrong in the build up to it. We took our eye off the ball, blah, blah, blah. You can, in professional sport, you can blink away a bad performance if you get a good one. So anyway, more on that a little bit later on with Quinny. Somebody was tweeting us the unofficial continuity Monaghan GAA supporters club with a picture of 3 cockroaches. Why? Because of this.
By the way, don't rule Monaghan out yet. The cockroaches of Division 1. They've always stayed up on the last day, usually. So beat Mayo, hope Tyrone do them a favour beating Armagh. You just never know, lads.
Come friendly bombs and fall on the Allianz National Football League, and there was another nuclear conflagration.
Yeah,
Tyrone did their bit by dragging Armagh into the deep water and drowning them like I thought they would.
Well, you wouldn't let me talk about them in the green, Joe, which I thought, by the way, was a disgrace. You were like, it's not that big. It's not that big a deal. Let's not talk about Monaghan early on. No one really cares.
We're not leading with it.
It's a joke. Let me tell you something, right? And clearly I said it in the clip. I was reasonably confident. People come up to me last week in their droves, on the street, in the office, at home. They were like, Monaghan,
That's 3 people, yeah. Go on.
Great run, lads. Great run. He's had a great run in Division 1. It's going to be a disappointing weekend for you in Castlebar, isn't it? I had to log on to rip.ie to double check had the funeral arrangements been made. Was it house private? What was the story here? I couldn't find anything. There was no mention of Monaghan's death or demise from Division 1 just yet. And lo and behold, they put in a performance yesterday against Mayo in Castlebar that belied belief, apparently. And a 10th successive year in Division 1 next year.
Your underlying assumption there is that this was par for the course.
For Monaghan, it is.
That is never in doubt. But come off it. Like, what? It's five out of the last 9 years, is that right? That they've stayed up on the last day. Like, it's absolutely in doubt. It's always in doubt. And, like, if you look at the record even, like, over the last couple of years, they scraped through.
And what?
Last year by with a 1 point win over Dublin.
Yeah, a 1 point win over Dublin, yeah. You'll take it, won't you?
Last year, Down were the only team they beat in the championship.
All right, yeah.
Here are their wins over the last 2 years in the league. Now, this is a Division 1 team, right, who you're saying justifiably...
you're about to embarrass yourself here, but go on.
Monaghan, they beat a poor Donegal team twice.
Right.
They beat a poor Dublin team, of course, last year.
Poor Dublin team.
They beat Roscommon. They beat the Mayo team, who were basically already checked out and had 10 changes from the previous weekend. That's the sum of their wins in total, right? Over 2 years. We're not talking about 1 year here.
Sorry.
5 wins in 2 years, and somehow they stay in. And they've Tyrone, obviously, next month in Omagh, and talking about dragging teams into the deep water. There was some conversation on the Sunday game last night about the possibility of which way this game was going to go. Conor McManus is the one caveat here, but that notwithstanding, what are Monaghan? Monaghan are not a Division 1 team. They should be.
Sorry, they've been in Division 1 for 10 years.
They should be.
Only Kerry have been in Division 1 for longer.
They'd be better off taking a step down.
Sorry, you forgot the Roscommon game that they won this year.
By the way, I mentioned Roscommon.
Well, sorry, they came to Clonus Roscommon. Remember, having won their first 3 games, Monaghan were the first team to beat them.
And then it turned out they weren't as good as everybody.
Mayo have their first defeat of the year. I'm not getting drawn into your shite anyway. Monaghan, deservedly a Division 1 team. And by the way, they're part of the furniture now in Division 1.
Can I ask a question? So you're looking at them last night and they're a goal and 3 to 2 points up after no time at all, and they look absolutely pumped. They're coming out the pitch, they're fisted on.
Yeah.
What is the problem that they just can't get pumped for games?
Monaghan?
Yeah.
They were ahead.
Sorry, they do get pumped in a lot of games. I'm talking about like get pumped up for games or get up for games. It seems like if you look at their history over the last couple of years in the Championship of the League, you have to accept that they're not beating teams around them.
They are beating teams around them. They're staying in Division 1 every single year for the last 10 years.
They beat Down in the Championship last year, Shane. That was it.
They had a poor Championship last year by their own standards, of course.
Standards.
Yeah, by their own standards. Yeah, Monaghan are a top tier team. Sorry, Monaghan have been in the top 6 in the country in the last 10 years. That's the league stats for you. Because to stay in Division 1,
can I ask
you have to be in the top 6.
A legitimate question though, right?
Yes.
Would they actually just be better off some year coming through Division 2, bouncing in with a sense of confidence and a winning mentality, and forgetting about the Ulster Championship and trying to make an All-Ireland semi-final? They're a bit like the Irish rugby team in that they've never been beyond the quarterfinals, even though they've won a couple of Ulsters, and
they were in the semi-finals in the 18 as well, yeah.
In the semi-final of the All-Ireland?
Yeah, lost to Tyrone by a point. The ball.
Sorry. Okay.
But like this Monaghan team, I hear your point. Like sometimes are you better off with a good Division 2 campaign. But the problem with Division 2 is you lose your first 2 games and all of a sudden you're thinking, Jesus, we better not go down to Division 3.
I remember talking to one of the ultimate Monaghan GAA men, and he was like, "Look, we're never going to win an All Ireland, but we can win an Ulster." I was like,
That's not the attitude to have. I disagree with whoever that was.
I don't know about that. Well, it's like
you have to believe you can win an All Ireland.
Well, I think that like the obsession with Ulster, that's your white whale. You kill the white whale and you're like, let's get fat on the blower.
I actually think Monaghan's attitude this year is different. I look at, my point about wanting to be in Division 1, look at some of the young players in that Monaghan. And by the way, that Monaghan forward line, any county would be delighted to have Conor McCarthy, Conor McManus, Jack McCarran, Micheál Bannigan, Stephen O'Hanlon. It's ridiculous, the talent in that forward line.
We do just need to take a second for Conor McManus and what he's doing at this stage of his career. Because every year at the end of the season, he'll do a piece with us for the last 4 or 5 years and he'll be like, you're going to ask me about retirement. I've stopped it. Just totally stopped. I don't think you should ever retire. When you're able to do this in the league,
it does mean that anything's possible, doesn't it? Like that's the one caveat from Monaghan, I would say.
Caveat,
But no, I would agree. I would agree. And you're taking this as a personal slight, which is not intended as. But I would agree that they are better off in Division 2 and going in and winning a load of games.
They're not.
Shane, they've won 5 games against average sides in Division 1 for various reasons. Either they'd in Mayo's case, obviously checked out, or they'd not been at the level we thought they were. Certainly in Donegal's case. I fair enough on the Roscommon one, I can argue with you that over and back, but their level is clearly, if they've won 5 league games, over 2 years.
You just need to win enough games to stay up in Division 1.
I know, but that's like table rationale, and it doesn't make full sense.
But of course it does. You stay in Division 1. How many?
I do see the benefit of it in that everybody plays Division 1 football all the time, but they haven't been able to get to a point where they believe in themselves as realistic All-Ireland contenders. And anyway, let's move on.
Sorry, Monaghan, the group. See the group. I guess structure this year that suits Monaghan down to a T. Monaghan they had a Super 8 group with Kerry, Galway, and Kildare a few years ago, and they topped it. Do you know Monaghan treated it like a league? And Monaghan will treat that group in the championship like a league.
Okay, so this year All-Ireland semi-final?
If they treat it like a league, they'll be... What?
100%. If
Monaghan like a Monaghan league, or like, a good team's league.
Vinnie Corey, Monaghan, up your boys. Don't listen to these lads. Fair play, you stayed in Division 1. 10th year in a row. Jealous. They're jealous. Westmeath would love to be there in Division 1.
Okay,
Kildare would
too. Division 3, Shane, will you stop?
Yeah. Well, listen, enjoy your Talton Cup. Stephen Cluxton, will we touch on him? Because the news kind of came out of the blue yesterday. I'm going to keep my Monaghan thing on my head here, by the way, for this conversation, because I've put it on now. Walks out of the dressing room. No one has heard any rumours that Stephen Cluxton is back in the Monaghan panel, but all of a sudden, here he is.
In the Dublin panel.
Sorry, of course, the Dublin panel. Yeah, who did I say?
Monaghan.
Oh, did I? Well, Monaghan on the brain, lads. Apologies. For this game against Louth yesterday, good win for Dublin. Back up to Division 1, straight back up. Does he play? I mean, what's the end game here for Stephen Cluxton? Is Desi Farrell suggesting afterwards that he was kind of coming in to cover a few injuries?
Yeah, I think we put Dublin in the green because Dublin have Mannion back. They'll have McCaffrey back by the time the championship matches matter, which, let's face it, they don't have an important match again. Obviously, the league final, and then there's a month of them playing a few friendlies before they get to the group stages. Right, and there's some trophy given out in the meantime that I wonder, will they go up the steps to? They certainly won't celebrate it wildly. There's a 13 in a row, 14 in a row that they're going to win in Leinster. They're back because they have strength and depth. I see people like, they need to change their style of play. Like, we haven't seen Dublin play football the way Dublin want to play football just yet, because they don't need to. They're the poster child for, like, get everybody back, get some strength and depth. And I assume that him coming back means that they have significant doubts about whether or not Evan Comerford is going to be fit for the championship. I don't think he's going to start. That's my instinct on this. I don't think he's going to start.
But do you think he should?
I don't know. But sure, how can you tell? Is he the same goalkeeper he was when he retired? If that's the case, then of course he should. But the man in charge is the one with possession of the jersey, who they've had in every game this year and who has done really, really well, who was brilliant yesterday, by the way. So maybe Cluxton's coming back in some kind of coaching capacity, and this isn't just, he's coming back to slit the throat of his rivals. Like I
think this is like it's. I think there's a bit sort of a Paul Scholes back to United job about this. I do think that there is a requirement. They look at fair enough. Obviously, they're low on numbers. Desi was basically saying that yesterday. We just literally don't have enough numbers. And then we've got like the greatest of all time sitting over here. He said he's available whenever we need him, so we'll stick him in. But even when you look at the coaching thing, it wouldn't be the worst thing to say to O'Hanlon. I mean, Comfort's maybe not going to be around the environment depending on the injury. To say to him, listen, we've got the goat back. You just take a seat there for a while, and we'll come back to you next year. You just spend the year looking at this guy and what he does. He probably wouldn't have even been in and around the camp when Cluxton was there last year. There's the one time where everybody's starting talking about Mayo to win the All-Ireland, and suddenly Avengers assemble over here. McCaffrey's back. Mannion kicks a point from the gods yesterday. Cluxton's back now. I take what you're saying, right? But isn't a half a Cluxton as good, nearly better than any other keeper that's ever lived?
We don't know. I like it.
So that's fair enough.
If he hits all the benchmarks in training, then maybe you have to give him an opportunity in a match to see if he's still the same. But irrespective of whether or not he is, because I remember talking to somebody involved with the Cork setup when Donal Logue came back. I was like, he's got to go straight back in. They're like, what are you talking about? We've got Anthony Nash. Mm-hmm. No one's getting in his place because he's in and he's playing really well. So this guy who has played all season has played really well and was making brilliant saves yesterday when there was a goal chance. There was 6 points down, I think. He makes a brilliant save. The game is settled. The game is actually over. That kind of sucks the wind out of Louth. So
I was even reading a piece in the Irish Times last weekend about David O'Hanlon and his kicking stats. His goal kicks have been brilliant.
Yeah. So look, it's good problem to have, but I see people that's not what they need. It's well, it's amazing. It's a shot in the arm for everybody. The standards, no one's slacking in any drill when Cluxton is around, And also, it doesn't remember, it's like, oh, Desi's lost the dressing room, he's lost all these players, none of them's coming back, and here's Cluxton straight back when he's needed. Like,
it's incredible that they've managed to keep a lid on it for 2 weeks. It really is. And like when you talk about Desi, I think that's like a
in this day and
testament
age
to him. That is
smartphones like that.
It's also detracted slightly from the bigger talking point around Dublin, which is like, where are this team going this year? Like 40 minutes in yesterday, they'd scored, if I'm right, it might have been 5 points. Against people are talking about Louth, and that's absolutely fair enough, and I'm not here to have a pop at Louth, but
go on
where
quickly.
it'll be very interesting to see how they go in the
we don't know,
league final against Derry.
I don't think we're going to know anything about the Dubs until the All-Ireland quarter final, because like as Leinster champions, they're going to be number 1 seeds.
Louth.
Yeah, they're going to be number 1 seeds in the round robin stage. Where's their neutral game going to be? Have we worked that out yet?
Well, it depends on who's in the group, doesn't it? It'll be geographical, I suppose.
I think the league final is going to be the best test we'll see of Dublin for the next while.
I don't think the league final. Yes, I don't think in the long run how they play against Derry, they might try some stuff. But like, were they lorrying ball into the full forward line the way they did against Meath yesterday, or was that just a thing for Meath? Are they waiting on that? I think the nuances of what Dublin are going to do won't emerge until they play somebody good, and they're not going to play somebody good for months. Anyway, we have one more in the green. It's France. Like we're not gonna talk too much about this. France were amazing on Friday night. Now we should bear in mind that a virus ripped through the Netherlands squad, and they were missing 4 or 5 of their best players. But notwithstanding that, Kylian Mbappe, the captain, he wants a hat-trick to overtake Michel Platini this weekend. Tonight.
Please don't do it tonight, Kylian.
He's like, I might get it tonight. I'm not sure. Will I get it tonight?
You're young, Kylian.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Take it easy.
Whatever he decides to do, he'll do.
Right. Okay, that was this week's version of the Gillette Labs Performance Rankings.